This movie is about the sum function and using the AutoSum command button. So we're going to introduce the sum function. I'll show you where the command button for AutoSum is. It's in two places. We're going to cover the main pitfall using AutoSum. We'll cover 3 of the main AutoSum rules, and then we're going to use AutoSum to sum some rows and some columns simultaneously. So this movie is mainly about AutoSum, but before we talk about AutoSum, we need to talk about the sum function itself. I've got a schedule set up with some fictitious numbers here for some sales for 4 different product lines and some cost of sales for those 4 product lines. What I want to do is sum the sales and cost of sales for each quarter and for the entire year so that I can have my schedule here generate some margin numbers. Quarter 1 is done. I've got a sum function in the active cell C9. The sum function is equal sum, and the range in the sum function is C5 to C8. If I press the F2 key, we get a visual display of C5 to C8, and it is all the sales for quarter 1 for the 4 products. Escape out of that, arrowing down, I've got a similar sum function that references a range that includes the cost of sales for those products, and arrowing down one more time, I've got a margin calculation that takes the sales, subtracts out the cost of sales, and gives me the margin. So quarter 1 is done, and I want to complete the schedule using AutoSum. So I'm going to left-click D9. We're on the Home tab, and AutoSum is up on the right side. And when I click it, Control-Enter, and AutoSum inserted a sum function in the active cell D9. Immediately I see I have sort of an issue. I've got sales in quarter 2 of $124,002, and none of the sales for any of the products ends in 2. But there is a 2 on the column heading because we're in the second quarter. So what's happened? I can press the F2 key to get us in the edit mode, and that causes Excel to put a box around the range that the sum formula is referencing, and we immediately see that's exactly what has happened. Is the sum function picks up the contiguous range of numerical values in the column above the cell where we initiated AutoSum. So there's a couple of different ways we can correct this. I can left arrow over, backspace, and put the correct range reference in there, Control-Enter, so that's corrected. Another way for me to correct this is to double-click the range reference in the formula bar, where I get fill handles that I can drag manually and re-identify the range, Control-Enter. The third way to correct this is very similar to the second way. Press the F2 key, the function 2 key. We shift to the edit mode, and again we get the fill handles that we can left-click and manually drag and make the correction that way. Control-Enter. So now we have our sales correctly stated for the second quarter. Now I need my cost of sales. So I'll left-click D14, make that the active cell. And this time I'm going to use the AutoSum sigma, which is the symbol for AutoSum, that's located on the Formulas tab. It's larger, but this is the second place you'll find AutoSum. When I left-click that, AutoSum automatically creates a range that doesn't include all of the cells that contain numbers above. It stops creating the range at the first instance of another sum that exists in that column. It has enough intelligence to know that I'm summing a subset of numbers within this column for which above that range there is already a sum. And in this case, that's exactly what I want to have happen. Control-Enter. I've got my cost of sales totaled. So AutoSum will sum a column of numbers, a contiguous range of numbers that exist above the reference cell. It'll stop at an instance where it finds a sum that's already in that column. But AutoSum will also sum across a range of numbers. I'll make G5 the active cell, left-click AutoSum, Control-Enter, and I've got my total for product 1 for the entire year. I want to show you that there's actually a quicker way to do this, to fill out this schedule, and I'll be able to show it to you twice. When you want to AutoSum multiple ranges of numbers, and in this case we have columns and rows that we want to AutoSum, left-click and manually select the range, including those cells that will contain the totals, both for the rows and the columns. In all of the AutoSum functions that you want to have total each of the columns and the rows are inserted automatically. Doing that once again, left-clicking and selecting the range of the numbers we want to add and the cells that we want to contain the sum functions. This time, instead of clicking sigma, the AutoSum function icon, I'm going to use the keyboard shortcut Alt equal, and I get the same result. So I'm now finished with my schedule. I'll left-click off of that. I've got my totals for each of the quarters, for sales and cost of sales, and I have my margins, and I have the totals for the year. So that's introducing sum and AutoSum. We saw that there were two locations for sigma, the AutoSum command button. We can use AutoSum to sum columns and rows. When we're summing columns or rows, we need to be careful of numerical column headings or row headings because they may be included or will be included in the sum if they're in the contiguous range of cells containing values to the left of or above the cells we're inputting the sum function using the AutoSum feature. AutoSum will, however, stop at either a blank cell, a cell containing text, or a cell containing another sum function. And lastly, we saw we can use Alt equal as the shortcut to initiate AutoSum, and we can sum rows and columns simultaneously by selecting a range.